because the imposter syndrome that comes up when you're writing a book is so fucking real. There's no amount of like support and like nice words and things that people say to you that quell that 100%. And at some point, you just have to realize, like, when you're given these opportunities to show up for your people, if you don't do it, you're doing such a disservice to them because they need you. They need your message. And it's so important to just get over your own ego because you're
Oh,
given
yeah.
these opportunities for a purpose.
Welcome to the Chingona Revolution podcast, where we will bring out your inner badass Latina, overcome self-doubt, help you gain clarity, and pave your own path, all while leading with courage. I am your host, Latina coach and speaker, Erica Cruz. Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of Chingona Revolution podcast. I have my amazing friend joining us, Jannese Torres. We are talking all about her new book, Financially Lit, which was published by Grand Central Publishing on April 30th, 2024. And it is the modern Latina's guide to level up your dinero and become financially poderosa. You can order your copy at financiallylitbook.com. And Jannese is an award-winning Latina Money Expert. She became an accidental entrepreneur after a job loss led her to create a successful Latin food blog, Delish D'Lites. Now, she helps her clients and listeners build successful online businesses that allow them to pursue financial independence and freedom. Jannese is on a mission to educate marginalized communities on topics like entrepreneurship, investing, and financial independence through her personal finance podcast, Quiero Dinero, and obviously now her book, Financially Lit. This is such a good conversation. Every time that I speak to Jannese, I never know exactly where it's going to go, but it's always a great conversation. And we talk all about the importance of feeling worthy in your wealth building journey. And we get into why her book, Financially Lit, is so important for marginalized communities. Let's get into the show. Jannese, I am so happy to see your face. Welcome back to Chingona Revolution podcast. How the hell are you?
Thank you for having me back. I love your show, by the way. I'm like an actual listener, and what you're doing here is fabulous. So thank you for having me. And I'm freaking great. I am in the middle of my book tour for my new book, Financially Lit, and I can't wait to talk about that and so much more on the show today.
Yes, I can't wait. And as the countdown was happening, I was just taken aback to our first ever podcast interview when I was on your podcast. And I
Mhm.
remember feeling super nervous. Obviously, you had already been doing it a while, but today we literally talked for 2 minutes and jumped right into it. So this wasn't even something I had planned, but I'm curious, if you could go back to the Jannese that was recording her first ever podcast episode, like, tell us about the difference between today and how automatic this was versus when you just got started. And the reason I'm asking this is because I think people look at you and I and think I could never get there. But we both started, we both had a first ever episode.
Yes, y'all. And it's cringy AF. Okay. So if you really want to like go down that rabbit hole, please go and listen to the first episode of the show because it's terrible. And it was so scripted. I think I spent like 6 or 7 hours just like recording it, just stopping, starting, deleting, overthinking because I was still, very much in corporate. I had no idea how to like speak in public. I had no idea how to have a conversation with myself in a room where there's like nobody else listening. So the whole thing is just hella awkward and cringe. And I like to tell creators now, especially the ones who, decide to work with me as a coach, you're gonna be cringed out by your content in the beginning. And if you're not doing it right or you're not doing it at all.
Totally. I could not agree with that more.
Yeah.
And then there just comes a point when you do it so much and it just becomes second nature,
Yeah,
right?
the
Just like
first time
whenever
is
you
always
step
the
on stage.
scariest shit. Like whether it's an IG live or your first, recruiting your first client, putting out your first branded post, like it's all going to freak you the hell out, but you also have to realize like the first time is always the hardest time and it's going to get a little incrementally easier every single time that you do it.
Yes. Oh, so well said. So before we get into the actual interview, thank you for sharing that. I just want to give you your flowers because this book sounds just like you. I felt like I was having a conversation with you as I read Financially Lit, which, by the
Love
way,
that.
what an epic name. How did you come up with this name?
So my first ever freebie for Yo Quiero Dinero is called the Financially Lit Latina. And it was just like a guide to my most popular blog posts and just like an introduction to the atmosphere, if you will. And so when I was thinking about the name, I was kind of going back and forth with a bunch of different options. Obviously, Yo Quiero Dinero was up there. But there was something about like financially lit, and especially the word lit, I think is like such a millennial word. But it also has a great way to like tie into literacy. So it was just like a
Right.
very millennial esque, like, vibe. And I think it just fit the brand so well. So it became the lead and it never left.
I love it. Yeah, because when I saw the book in person, which thank you so much for sending it over. I was so excited when I got it. I was like financially lit and I looked at it and I was like, "Oh my god, financially literate." And I was like, "Did I just have like a blonde moment? What just happened here?" Nothing against blondes, by the way. Shouldn't have said that. But yeah, I was like, this is such a good book and you are in the front of this
Yes.
book
Yeah.
with your gold nails and your pink blazer. Why is it important that you were on the front cover of this book?
Oh, I love this question because this was part of my initial like must-have list when I was thinking about putting out a book. I said it has to be sassy, it has to be in Spanglish, and it has to have my face on it. Because if you go into any major bookstore and go to the business or personal finance section, you're just going to get a bunch of boring ass books with white, blue, green, various, shades of those colors and white men you know? And I'm
Yep.
just like, first of all, I want people to be very clear about who this book is for. And that's why it's literally on the title, on the cover, The Modern Latina's Guide to Money. I didn't want there to be any question like who this book was for. And I think from a representation perspective, just the fact that less than like 10% of authors in general are Latino, I was like,
Totally.
it has to be like that I'm on this cover or I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, I find this so interesting because a lot of times when people are starting things, they don't really want to specify who this is for because the thought it's almost like the scarcity mindset comes in of, "Oh my gosh, but I can have so many more readers if I don't
Yeah.
specify that it's for Latinas." But
Mhm.
tell me, how has specifying that this is the modern Latina's guide to leveling up your dinero and becoming financially poderosa, what has this done for the book, in your opinion, being that it is so focused and targeted, and plus your story is embedded in it as a Latina?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it gives us permission to even start having these conversations around money, which are still very taboo in our community. So I wanted this book to be like an invitation to our community to be like, hell yeah, we deserve to build wealth. Hell yeah, we work hard as hell and we should have more to show for it. And I want to help you get there. But it's funny because I had the same questions about the podcast. Yo quiero dinero, obviously, that's a Spanish term, means I want money. And I would get the questions of like, well, can I listen to this if I don't speak Spanish? And I'm like, first of all, if you listen to the podcast, you know it's in English.
Yep.
Second of all, I have men, women of all ethnicities, folks from every corner of the world that listen to the show. I think we're up to like 100 different countries. So
That's incredible.
clearly, just because I'm speaking from my lived experience as a first gen Latina does not mean this information is not also applicable to you. And the book is the same thing. Like I've had Black women, Asian women, men all coming to book signings, which, as a publisher, maybe you'd think like, well, why the hell would these people read this book? And it's because they're connected to the messenger, because they see something in me that resonates with them and they want to learn from me. And I want anybody who's thinking about putting themselves out there to understand that just because you're unapologetic in like your lane doesn't mean that other people aren't going to want to hop in there and like party with you.
Totally. Totally. You spoke at DL's Emancipation Conference, right? And her whole messaging is like women of color coaches. Did you see how many white women were in the room?
Girl. Yes. I was just
Yeah,
like, well, hello. I mean, somebody's receiving the message and it might not even be the people that you think.
exactly.
But at the end of the day, like you need to find the person that connects with you. And that's
Mhm.
why I'm just like, there's no such thing as oversaturation. There's no such thing as like being too specific, too niched, because your people are your people and they're gonna find you regardless.
Exactly. Exactly. So I just realized when I was like, "Oh, I'm going to give you your flowers," I didn't even finish reading off what I wrote down. So yes, the book sounds just like you, but I also wanted to compliment you on how it is a perfect balance between your very interesting story, but it's so focused on mindset, which is
Mm,
so important,
yeah.
but there's also practical financial advice. You really break things down in this book, and the way that it's formatted, I feel like it helps my ADHD brain. I mainly do audiobooks, obviously, whenever I get physical books, but
Right.
I'm like, oh, she makes this so easy to read. Like even the journal exercises, how they're color blocked. I
Yeah.
just feel like this is so inclusive for the way that we learn and just living in such a distracted world. You did such a great job of even just hooking us in with the chapter titles, like Jenny from the block to Jenny with the bag. Like, what an incredible, that's my favorite chapter. I want to talk
Me
about that
too.
one too.
Me too.
So we'll get to that in a second. But when you were writing the book, you were writing it kind of from start to finish without any real time feedback from your audience, right? You
Yeah.
were maybe getting feedback from editors and from publishers, but not from your actual audience. And now that the book's been out for 3 months and you've been on your book tour and you're kind of in the middle of it and you've been on podcasts and people have had the chance to read it, how do you feel about the book now? Because I'm sure there was a lot of unknown as soon as it was released. Like, how is this going to be taken? So, how does it feel now that you are in the middle of the feedback and people have read it and people have started implementing?
Yeah. One of the things that's been very, I don't know if like surprising, but just like so wow moment is how many people have told me that they literally had to like stop reading and like compose themselves because the emotions that the book is triggering in people, it's just like I feel so seen. I feel like you're literally describing my story. And you know, I like to think that I have an experience in this life that is sort of common for a first gen Latina, being the first kid to go to college and like pursue the career and find that all these hopes and dreams that we thought we should want are not the thing. And then dealing with that existential crisis of what it means to now decide that we want a different dream than our parents, and then learning how it's not just about working hard and making money because we know what that looks like. That's our parents lived experience, and many of them don't have anything to show for it. So there's like
Mhm.
all of these things that we've had to confront. And as much as I know it is a common lived experience because I've talked to so many people on the podcast and just in the realm of Yo Quiero Dinero, that to have people have those types of reactions to my
Yeah.
story, it's just like, well, damn, okay, maybe this girl knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Because the imposter syndrome that comes up when you're writing a book is so fucking real. There's no amount of like support and like nice words and things that people say to you that quell that 100%. And at some point you just have to realize, like, when you're given these opportunities to show up for your people, if you don't do it, you're doing such a disservice to them because they need you. They need your message. And it's so important to just get over your own ego because you're
Oh,
given
yeah.
these opportunities for a purpose.
Oh, that was like a mic drop moment. Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. I have for my clients, I teach them something called the spotlight analogy, where whenever they're feeling a lot of imposter syndrome or they're feeling like they can't do it, it's because the spotlight is on themselves
Hmm.
instead of who they're doing it for. So I'm like, can we
Ooh,
remove the spotlight off us and whoever it is that you want to create this for? And it's so much
yeah.
easier to take imperfect action and to show up and to do the thing when you're focused on the reason why you're doing it. So, oh, that was so beautifully said. And, there's something about money that just, I mean, money is just money, right? We are the people that have the energy. It's not the money. We are the people that have the power. We give money the power based on how it is that we use it. But I
Right.
think in our culture, and actually, I like underlined one of these because you talk about in my favorite chapter, Jenny from the Block, you talk about how, this perspective suggests that true spiritual and closeness to God can only be achieved through a life of poverty and self denial. So you talk about just the religious trauma that can also come with financial trauma, how a lot
Mhm.
of times just religiously we're taught to feel ashamed if we want money, ashamed if we want these things.
Right.
And it's so fascinating to me because as I, as a coach running my mastermind, that's a spiritual business mastermind, we have a whole thing about abundance. And we read this book about abundance. And what it talks about is the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about how if you do believe in a higher power, you have access to all abundance, but we're the ones who block it.
Right.
So all of this to say that the emotional piece makes so much sense because through money, a lot of times we touch these wounds, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in your own life, did you grow up thinking that money was evil? Is that what you were taught?
Ooh, so I don't think I thought that money was evil, but I know for sure money was this thing that you had to sacrifice for. And I saw that with my parents' dynamic. So my father was the breadwinner of the family and he was a traveling consultant. So he would hop on a plane Monday morning and not be home till Friday. And so I saw that as like, oh, so if you want to make a lot of money, you got to sacrifice time with your family. And then on the flip side, I saw money being a source of contention from like a woman's perspective because it forced you to be financially reliant on a man. You know, I always saw like the woman has to sacrifice her earning power because that's just what you do as a good mother, as a woman, as a wife, as a partner. Because that's what I saw my mom do. My mom worked part time until I was in high school because she just couldn't wrap her head around, you know, outsourcing care to us in that way. She had to raise us alone. She was away from her support system in Puerto Rico. And so I saw, well, motherhood is not correlated with financial freedom. So motherhood seems like a thing that I don't want to necessarily do because it's going to keep me stuck and broke. And then I saw, if you want to make a lot of money, you're going to have to work your ass off and you're going to have a career that's going to force you to sacrifice time with your family. So it's a lot of like stuff that was influencing then how I operated from a personal perspective, which now at the age of almost 40, I've had to like reconcile, you know, a lot of decisions that I made because of the financial trauma that I saw.
Oh man, I just got chills with that response. Wow.
Yeah. I've had so many people reach out to me and be like, oh my God, I was so triggered by this whole narrative that you spoke about where I saw motherhood in direct conflict with like financial freedom. And I'm just like, because we saw so much sacrifice from our own mothers. You know, how
Yeah.
many of them sacrificed their own financial stability, their own autonomy because that's just what you did. You know, now I think we're in a society where that responsibility is shifting and we're seeing more and more women becoming breadwinners and now stay-at-home dads are a more normal thing. And, you
Right.
know, society is just flipping on its head. But we didn't have examples of like what it looks like to be a boss bitch and also have kids and be killing it in your business and blah, blah, blah. So now we're the ones that are having to like redefine what that success looks like and give ourselves permission to not only pursue our personal goals, whether that's marriage, motherhood, etc., but also know that we can have robust careers. We can make a shit ton of money. We can have amazing businesses, and it does not have to require the sacrifice that we've seen in the past.
Oh, so well said. I feel like this is a good segment to my next question of why is worthiness so important when building wealth?
Oh God. I mean, you know, I've found so many times in conversations with clients and, you know, just having discussions around what it even means to be wealthy and how to do it, you know, because there are steps that we can take, you know, avoiding debt, investing, like not living beyond your means. There's a lot of different practical things we know we should be doing with our money. But when it comes down to the mindset of, do you even think you're worthy of these opportunities? Do you even think you're worthy of asking for a raise? Do you even think you're worthy of raising your price? Do you even think you're worthy of like not tolerating this bullshit relationship which is doing nothing for you? You know, I think when it comes down to it, until we believe that we're capable of whatever it is that we want to achieve, no amount of strategy, no checklist, no freebie, no course you sign up for is actually going to get you there because you have to have that radical self belief that whatever you want to achieve, you are actually worthy of. And I found that time and time again, like when people make that switch, hell yeah, I deserve this shit and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it. That's when your life changes.
Totally. Yeah. It starts with you making the decision that you're worthy, and then things begin to line up. Because if you
100%.
go into a salary negotiation and you don't feel worthy of that raise, you are not going to kill it in that salary
You
negotiation. And
definitely
in
are not. They're going to read that weakness and they're going to be like, nah, girl, sit down. We'll talk again next year.
Exactly, exactly. Like somebody, I think it was 2 days ago, one of my clients was asking me what they should charge for their services, and I was like, "Look, girl, I'm gonna be honest with you. Whether you charge $80 or $800 doesn't matter. What matters is your belief about it. You have to have
Mhm.
your full belief behind what it is that you're charging. And if for you $80 is too much, it's gonna be too much for everyone else because
Yeah.
that's literally what you're putting out." So you also talk about everybody needs a side hustle. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I, as an elder millennial, have seen the real world impact of not having multiple streams of income,
Yeah.
mainly because I graduated into one of the worst job markets in history, right?
Mhm.
I graduated in May 2007, about 6 months before the Great Recession. Fucking great timing. And, I saw people after 20, 30 years in a job just get walked out of the office
Yeah.
at 22 years old. I'm like watching this happening. Like, what is all this? I thought like we went to college to have these like robust, long, stable careers that like this doesn't happen to us, because I saw my parents struggle maintaining jobs because they only had a high school diploma and it was like, revolving doors.
Yeah.
They were so dispensable. And I was like, well, I went to school so that this is not my reality. So why is this happening here? And it took my own layoff in January of 2014 for the rug to be pulled out from under me and me to realize, oh, wow, like 30 minutes ago, I had a job and now I have a box to collect my things and got to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And that was like the light bulb moment for me that I realized I never want a job to have that kind of power over me to just pull the rug out from under me and completely disrupt my financial life. And I've always operated too from like, I'm never going to rely on a man to do that either. From when I was very young,
Yep.
I was just like, girl, you got to be your own safety net, you know? And so after that layoff, I realized I never wanted to be in that position again. And like 6 months before that, I had started my food blog, Delish D'Lites. It was very much a hobby. But with that layoff, there was like this switch that happened to me internally where I said, I don't know how this is going to pan out. I don't know where this is going to go, but I want to turn this little project into some source of income. I don't know if it's ever going to be like the type of thing that I can quit my job and do full time, but I'm just not going to allow myself to ever be in a position again that when I do get another job, that's the only way that I have to make money. And
Mhm.
that was like, I did that and never looked back.
If this podcast is resonating with you, then I invite you to my newest webinar happening on Monday, July 29th at 5 o'clock Pacific time. 4 proven steps to reinvent yourself in just 90 days. This is for you if you know that you're ready for a change in your life. Maybe you feel stuck and you know that something needs to change, even if you don't know what that change is just yet. It's also for you if you are ready to reinvent yourself, whether this means building confidence, maybe you want to start creating content, maybe you want to start or grow a business, or maybe you want to pivot your career. It's also for you if your dreams or whatever goals you have currently live in your head and maybe your journal, but you're ready to make them a reality. You're ready to make them something that others can see outside of you, right? Not just living in your brain, not just living in your journal, or maybe you've been putting everybody else's needs before your own and you're really ready to work on you, especially because we are officially halfway through the year at this point. So, in this webinar, you are going to learn why it is that you feel stuck and why it is that you resist change. You're going to learn how to go from thinking about your goals and dreams to actually starting, whether it is a dream project of yours or a business. You're going to learn how to go from thinking about it to actually starting it. You're also going to learn how it's possible to completely reinvent yourself in less than 90 days. And I'm going to be sharing the 4-step framework and my strategies that have supported me and hundreds of clients in embracing change and executing projects successfully. I mean, we are talking launching podcasts, dating after never having dated before, dating after a divorce, advocating for themselves at work, transitioning to a different new career, pivoting from one industry to the other. I mean, The projects that my clients have worked on are incredible. Anything it is that you want to do that you've held yourself back from, come to this webinar. We're going to go over those 4 proven steps to reinvent yourself. And I'm super excited because at the end of the webinar, we are going to be opening the doors for Courage Driven Latina. So if you've had your eyes on Courage Driven Latina, now is the time to join. So make sure that you register for the webinar because there will be a bonus. So I don't want you to miss the bonus, but if you're not familiar with Courage Driven Latina, it is my transformational 12-month group coaching program that's going to help you gain clarity, confidence, community. It helps you execute a courage project in 90 days and connects you with a like-minded community of badass women. And there will be a special 48-hour bonus for all of you who attend the webinar. So be sure to register by using the link down below. Again, this is happening on Monday, July 29th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. I cannot wait to see you at 4 proven steps to reinvent yourself in just 90 days. How amazing that it was a food blog that kicked everything off, right? And then that started bringing in passive income. And then your podcast ended up being about money. And I just love, Steve Jobs says we can't connect the dots looking forward. We can only connect them looking back. But it's like so that was the pivotal moment that started everything else.
Yeah.
How fascinating. Okay, I want to go back to my favorite chapter. So this chapter is called When Jenny from the Block Becomes Jenny with the Bag. And you talk about how whenever we make it, instead of feeling like we've made it, we also have this why me feeling. And then you also said, no, this is the one I underlined. Nobody talks about the grief that comes from growth. So tell us a little bit more about this, because I felt the exact same way, right? It's like you check all the boxes, you get there and you're like, I should be happy now. Like happiness is some type of destination. And then you get there and it's guilt and it's like, why me? So tell us about your experience whenever you became Jenny with the bag.
Yeah, it's easy, I think, when we're living in our little insulated bubbles to just not feel those emotions as pronounced as like very pronounced. But when we go back to our hometowns and we go back to our friend circle or families and realize like nobody else is on this path. Nobody else is living their quote dream life. Nobody else has the financial stability and the ability to just like dictate what their day looks like and work on something they're excited about and just have this freedom. It makes you feel like what's going on? Like is there a crack in the matrix? Like is this real? Is this actually, am I deserving of this? And then I think inevitably too, and I've seen this with a lot of friends who like quote unquote made it out of the hood, you start getting like snarky comments too sometimes from family when you show up to like a reunion and you have like your little fancy purse or you got your new car or you invite the family over for the first Thanksgiving at your new home and they're just like, "Oh, you got first world problems now. Who do you think you are?" Or, must be nice. Must be nice is such a fucking trigger phrase for me because it comes from the biggest haters in your life. Like nobody who says must be nice or good for you, that's another one. Nobody who says good for you is actually happy for you. And nobody who says must be nice is actually, happy for your success. It's always just like side comments. And that usually comes from people who are living in like a victim mentality, who are living in scarcity. And it can feel almost like you're ashamed. You're made to feel ashamed of what you accomplished and you're no longer relatable. You're like that cousin that lives in the suburbs. You don't understand what it's like to struggle no more. Don't give us advice because you don't know what it's like. And it's just like, bro, what are you talking about? I literally came from the same fucking place as you. I just made different choices and decided that just because this is where I come from doesn't mean this is where I need to end up. So there's a lot of emotions that come with, quote unquote, making it. And I don't think we talk enough about it because it's something that we feel shameful for even like experiencing because we know how damn hard we worked to like get here. But it's also, I think there's a lot of people who feel like they have to hide their success because it makes them more relatable and it makes them like be able to keep these people who've been with you up until this point. But unfortunately, maybe some of these people don't need to be on this next part of your journey because they're just not the environment that's going to help you continue to elevate. They might actually be the ones that drag you back down.
Exactly. And what I've seen with some of my clients is sometimes they fear success because they fear this. They
Hmm.
fear not having losing their existing community, or they fear hurting somebody's feelings that
Yep.
they have had success, when it's so interesting because what actually happens is whenever you get ahead, you can bring people with you, the people who want to
Facts.
come, and not everybody's supposed to come with you.
Yes. Absolutely. I think that's so important too, because we, many of us have this idea of like the fact that wealth can isolate you. And it's like, no, you can actually use it to bring more people into your atmosphere. And one example for me was after I quit my job, to celebrate like my 1 year, entrepreneurial anniversary, I took my mom on a like all expenses paid trip to Paris and London. And I think that was the first time that she actually got to experience this level of success that I've been able to achieve. And she finally like understood
Yeah.
why the sacrifices were worth it and why I made the decisions that I made and why I took the risks that I did. And by the end of that trip, she was just like, I get it. Like, we're the crazy ones that are doing the same shit that doesn't work.
Oh my gosh, how
Yeah.
beautiful. So
Yeah.
before then, when she found out that you were leaving your job, what was her reaction?
Oh God, she was freaking out. She's like, "What do you mean? You like got 2 degrees, you're making six figures, working for a Fortune 50 company that's gonna give you a pension if you stay here until you're 62.
The
Um,
pension.
Girl, I had a whole ass pension. I gave up $1 million pension. Okay. So they were like crazy. They're like, oh my God, you're out of your fucking mind. But I knew for me, like, I'm like, I cannot be sitting in this cubicle for the next 30 plus years. Are you crazy? This is gonna kill me before I'm dead. And you know, I'm a numbers girl. And for me, I found time and time again, like the numbers don't lie. And so I actually had to show them how much money the business was making versus like what I was earning with my paycheck. And the fact that I'm like, y'all, I could do like one project a month and be making more than I'm making in like 40 hours a week in a month at this job. And, once I showed them what was happening, they're like, we're going to trust you. Okay. We're going to trust you. But, just make the shit work.
That is so funny because were already making it work, right? But
Yeah,
it
yeah,
just
I've been making it work for years, and it was just, like, the fear of giving up that identity, of,
yeah,
like, changing the
exactly.
narrative, of allowing people to have this perspective of, like, "Oh, Janice is changing, and we don't know what to do with this information." I just decided to, like, that's not my problem, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't need your actual approval on this life decision, I just want you to know because I respect you enough as my family, but this is not me asking for permission.
Yeah.
Just be clear.
Yes. Oh, I love it so much. So I love that in the book you also talk about having a family emergency fund where, because I mean, as much as your success is yours, at the end of the day, we're still Latinas. We still really care
Mhm.
about our family. We still want to give back. So I love that in that chapter you talk about setting financial boundaries, but also having an emergency fund for your family. So I think sometimes as people hear these conversations, they can get triggered because they're like, wait, but I care about my family. And I think those two things can exist, right? Where you can get yourself ahead. And when you get yourself ahead, you can care for your family, but you care for
Yeah,
them on your own terms, not
absolutely.
based on, because I don't know if this has happened to you, but I've had a situation where like a family member has been like, well, Erica makes money, she can pay for it. And they just
Mm,
assume that I can
mhm.
take care of it. And I think that is where financial boundaries really do need to be set, because like you're only
Yeah,
seeing one part of the story. You don't know what my expenses are like. You don't know what goes on behind the scenes. And even if I did have an abundance of money, like it's my decision what I do with it.
yeah.
So,
That's where you kind of have to realize that, it is your job to enforce these boundaries and you can't be everybody's savior as much as you may want to be, because as a first generation wealth builder, the future generations and how they're able to benefit from our hard work is only as solid as the foundation that we set today. And
yeah.
so if we are just like overextending ourselves and self-sabotaging our own financial futures because we feel this huge sense of obligation, then the next generation is just going to have to struggle the same way that we have. And so I like to think about it, there has to be a balance. I want to be able to give, but I also want to be able to give without sacrificing future me and future generations that come after me.
Yeah. Definitely. Oh, that's so beautifully said. So speaking about giving, you have completely transformed the way that I think about finances in partnerships. And when it comes to, obviously, I'm not married, I'm not engaged, but after hearing your story, I am now certain that I need a prenup. Even if
Yes.
I end up no, it has to be a prenup because now I know, right? But even if I end up with somebody who's wildly more successful than I am, I still think that that is so important for both that individual and myself,
Yeah.
especially because so many emotions can come up during relationships or if a relationship does break, that sometimes or at least I saw this with my own parents where like the separation was so messy that my dad ended up having to file for bankruptcy. My mom
Mhm.
lost a house. Like everybody was just messed up financially because there was no form of that, like that decision wasn't already made.
Yeah.
And you have a chapter of this in your book as well. But for those people who are maybe like thinking about getting a postnup or who are maybe recently engaged and considering a prenup, what would you say to them? Because sometimes our culture can be like, look at it as such a negative thing. But after hearing your story, I'm like, no, like everybody needs to have one. So, what would you say to somebody who's either already married or considering getting married about having a prenup or a postnup?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is do not invite opinions into your relationship when it comes to this, because at the end of the day, it's the two of you. And it doesn't matter what your mom, your tia, your abuela has to say about it. There's none of their damn business. So that's number one. Number two, for me, it's a red flag if your partner does not at least want to entertain the conversation. Because for me, when I got to really understand the purpose of these documents, I realized that this is actually meant to benefit both people. This is actually
Right.
meant for you to have way more autonomy and control over how your assets are divided in the event of a divorce than your state in which you reside. Because we all have prenuptial agreements if we're married without a prenup. You just are subject to the family law in the state that you live in. And so, for example, if you live in California, which is a community property state, it's automatically 50-50, no matter who earned it.
Mhm.
Everything you earn by invest in after you get married is considered a community property asset. And so, if you're the one who is out here building your empire, you got a whole ass business, you're creating intellectual property, you're writing books, you're buying real estate, it doesn't matter that you did that. It's going to be subject to divorce proceedings unless you specify this in a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement. And so, for me, in my own experience, I realized just the true power of these documents when I got divorced while writing this book, and realized that, like, my business is a marital asset because I built it during the marriage. And if I had
Mhm.
had to give my ex half of the valuation of that business, that would have been multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. It would have had me have to give him half of my multiple six-figure retirement portfolio. I was writing a book. The book royalties are intellectual property that are subject to divorce. There's a lot of things that we as women in this generation are doing that previous generations of women could not even do, like building wealth. It wasn't more than a generation ago that women couldn't even get lines of credit. They couldn't even get mortgages without a husband or a man's
So
name
crazy.
on them. So, like, the fact that we are this first generation of wealth building mujeres, we have white man problems now, and we need to be operating as such, because white men have been using these tools for generations to protect their empires, and we need to be doing the same shit. And it is what it is. And whoever feels about it, they can feel how they feel about it. But at the end of the day, there's too much at stake. You have too much at risk to just be letting the government decide what to do with all your hard work.
100%. Oh, that was so good. Yes, that was a mic drop moment. That was. The last question I have for you is what message do you hope that people walk away with after reading your book? Like obviously there's so much information there, but the overall intention behind writing the book, what do you want? Cuz people are going to forget details that they read, but what message
Mhm.
do you want them to keep?
I want them to understand that just because struggle has been a hallmark of our community, that doesn't need to be the theme going forward. I think with the power of the internet and podcasts and blogs and now books that are written for our community, there's just really no reason for you not to be learning this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so much power in self-education. Self-education has gotten me where I am today, not only with my finances, but also with my business. Um, And I just cannot harp enough on the idea that you must be a perpetual learner. Like that is the key to success in life. And so if you want to get wealthy, if you want to invest, if you want to be a first generation wealth builder, you can do that shit and you deserve to do it. And I hope that this book helps you get there.
So good. Where can people get a copy of the book?
Yeah, so you can actually get the copy, the physical copy, as well as the audiobook at financiallylitbook.com. And I also have details around the book tour that I'm doing. So financiallylitbook.com.
Amazing. Jannese, it is always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank
You're
you.
just such a good interviewer that we got through all my questions and more. I was able to just kind of ask as we were talking, but I was coaching my clients right before we got on this, and I was like, just I have to go like 5 minutes early because I'm interviewing Jannese, and all of their eyes lit up and they were so excited. So you really created. I just want to thank you for leading our community and showing us what's possible.
Thank
And
you.
I'm just so lucky to be able to call you a friend, like to hold this physical book in my hand in California and see you virtually is insane to me. And you've just changed so many lives. Like, keep shining, keep doing your thing. And I'm always here for you. And I'm just so lucky to have you in my life.
Thank you, hermana. The feeling is so mutual, and keep killing it too, because we are going to be out here changing the world for the next generation.
We are. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. Make sure to visit theericacruz.com. That's Erica with a K, where you can subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. You can help this podcast grow by supporting me with an Apple Podcast rate and review. If you took anything away from this episode, I invite you to take a screenshot and share it on social media so that your favorite badass Latinas can also check it out. Be sure to tag me at the Erica Cruz. That's Erica with a K, because I want to see it. If you're ready to join the revolution and be a part of the Courage Driven Latina community, visit couragedrivenlatina.com to get more information and join the waitlist. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.